I thought it may be interesting to start, taking you back a bit, you sharing the small screen with Francis Ford Coppola.
Tommy Gravedigger, it was researched the year before I shot it, and for the research I actually worked in the cemetery as a gravedigger for 6 weeks. So, and Tommy was one of the characters of Heolgerrig and one of the characters I knew, and actually a distant relative of mine, because most people in the village were related anyway. And anyway, we made the film, and at the end, when it was finished, it was shown on Barry Norman's Film 74, and they had there were 2 films in the programme. One was Godfather 2, and the other one was Tommy Gravedigger.
Wow.
And at the time we were poor students, we didn't have any money, so we had no television. So we actually watched it in a shop window in Oxford Street in the centre of London.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so... And the film was later, I think it was later that year, maybe the following year, it was broadcast by BBC Two as a proper documentary, yeah.
So what was it about that character?
He was an amazing character. There were so many stories about the cemetery, which, we could only capture a few of them, but he could have gone on for forever. One of the things he did, which was really interesting, because he was from Heolgerrig, my village, if someone died in Heolgerrig, he'd bury them all close together in the cemetery. And also almost relative to their position in the village. So it was as if the main street in Heolgerrig was recreated in the cemetery.
Wow.
And they were buried next to their neighbours, which is incredible. But there's just so many stories from him. And he went to see, when he was 21, I think, he went to Blackpool, and he met a fortune teller who said, when you're older, you'll be on television and you'll be famous. And he thought that was a joke, and he laughed. And he said, it actually came true.
So he would allocate the plots, then, in the cemetery?
Yeah. Yes, he would decide where you go. And families would be together, they'd be in the same grave, husband, wife and children. And relative to their houses, they'd be quite close together. So they were a little community in the cemetery. I don't think they do that these days.
So that piece was your first documentary film.
That's right,
having graduated, presumably.
Yeah.
Just take us back then.
It was my final year project.
Right.
In the final year, we had to do a project, a film, and we had to crew on other films. So I crewed on 5 other films as well. So it was a pretty tough year, that was, yeah.
But you'd studied in London, studied film?
Yeah, I did 3 years, did a degree in photographic arts. At the time, it was the only place that did it in the UK. We could do it. It was the first course to award a degree, and it was a pretty tough course.
This was Westminster?
Yeah. The main building was it was incredible being in the centre of London, because it was based in Regent Street, right opposite the BBC. So you had this amazing location, amazing experience, and a great time to be in London.
So going to study film, in your mind, by making that decision to start that course, was it about stills photography or was the filmmaking? That's
interesting. It was, the course was film and photography. And you did both for 2 years. And then in your 3rd year you specialised, you decided what you wanted to do. So at the beginning I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure.
But both very much analogue at that point.
Oh, completely, yeah.
Handling film, processing
That's
film.
Right, yeah, very physical.
But you'd had your start handling cameras back here in the village.
Yeah.
So, first cameras, what sparked that first love of photography?
Well, my father bought me my first camera. I must have been about 9, 10. And I took some still photographs with that. And then I must have been about 11, and he bought me a movie camera. So he loved taking pictures. He loved making movies. He wasn't what you'd call a keen amateur. He didn't do developing or any of that. But he loved to take photographs. And I think that started the filmmaking and the photography. And then obviously went on to process and develop when I must have been about 11. Making films as well at that age. So one of my films won an award I must have been about 13. It was a horror film.
Did the graveyard figure in that one?
The monster from the bog or something. I was really into horror and sci-fi, and yeah, that's what I thought I wanted to do. And when I was younger, I had a puppet theatre, and I loved puppets, and I used to put on shows and build sets and write plays.
So that must have been a fascinating, and being so close to the BBC, must have been a fascinating time for young filmmakers, because there would have been a ready supply of outlets to, if they were good, for the resulting works to be shown.
At that time, what's so different from now is that there were two courses really that did film, our course and the National Film School, and so there weren't that many students coming out every year. 8 from ours, I think. So it was about 16 students in the whole of the UK. So the market then was just, it was huge. There's so many opportunities.
That's interesting. That's a low number, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was that a low intake going in?
Yeah.
All right. So
I think there were 30 initially on the course, and then they split into film and into still photography. So, but still very small numbers, considering that's the whole of the UK.
And you stuck with film?
Yeah.
But still wielding a stills camera.
That's right, yeah. I did the project Once Upon a Time in Wales. That was complete when I was actually studying film in my final year. So I did that in my spare time. So
that was a busy final year for you then.
I was just mad, completely mad.
Well, let's talk about Once Upon a Time in Wales, because that's kind of where it started in terms of, I think I'm right in saying, your exposure in Wales back home.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for that project?
What happened was, the photographs were taken in 1972, 73 when I was a student, and I did nothing with, I put them all together, I had a whole set of prints, and I took them to a photographic gallery in Cardiff, and they weren't interested, basically. And I had criticism and, advice on how to take photographs and so forth, which meant I just put them away and gave up on that type of photography for many years.
Was that a commercial gallery, or was it one of the bigger galleries we probably know of?
Yeah, one of the big ones you probably know of. Yeah.
Right, okay.
So, but it completely put me off that type of photography for many years.
What a shame.
Yeah.
Because it's very much back now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you took that as a project in your final year, knowing that you had a ready, presumably, mix of ingredients in the characters back here in the village.
That's right. Heolgerrig was an amazing place in those days. Amazing. It was almost completely Welsh speaking.
Here in Merthyr?
Yeah, the village was. My grandparents, Welsh was the main language in the house. But my father's generation, they were the generation that sort of dropped their language and thought it better that they speak English. And so my generation then, we were almost completely English. But I was brought up with those people still alive in the village. Most of the characters in the photographs, those portraits, they're Welsh-speaking characters. What
approach did you take in terms of, you had the characters, but what was it you wanted to capture? Was it as simple as, this is life in a small Welsh village?
More or less, but also so many projects of portraits, particularly portraits of people in the South Wales valleys, were taken by outside photographers who moved in, didn't know the communities, weren't really, close to the people. And I think mine was different in that way. And also they tended to choose, they photograph miners coming home from work, or, in the tin bath in front of the fire. And
the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. So I didn't want to do that. And I just wanted to do something a little bit different. But they were amazing characters.
And the names. Some of the names just made me giggle.
And stories behind them.
Tex Jones. And we'll come to the follow-up project. The bricklayer, the builder, Billy Bricks.
Billy Bricks, yes.
Tommy Gravedigger, which you featured in your documentary. Mad Malcolm. So, does he feature in any of the photos? I haven't seen any of the published photographs.
Of Mad Malcolm?
Yeah. Yes, so he liked to do a bit of funny fags or...
Yes, yeah.
Partake in anything that's sent from somewhere else. Yeah.
No substance is too strong.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what a mix, a real mix of different characters.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I was very aware of at the time, and I think that probably was a big thing, was that those people weren't going to be around for much longer. It was the end of that era, and you would never find people like that again. And if I didn't capture it at that time, if I hadn't captured it at that time, they would have been lost. So
you were very conscious
yeah,
of that?
Very much so.
Was that brought home to you by moving to London and seeing the bigger metropolis, if you like, of how things happen elsewhere and what you'd come from?
Possibly. But again, London was quite interesting. At that time, London was a great place to be. Living in Chiswick, the local pubs near us, they were full of characters exactly the same. You just don't see that now again. That's all gone. But there was quite a lot of that there as well. And quite a few of the places we went, we found these interesting people. Perhaps that's just me.
but that's an important point, isn't it? You were a local. So my next question, the obvious one, would be how you were accepted or how willing they were to participate. Did they just let you run riot with the camera?
Very much so, yeah, no problem at all. Well, most of the people enjoyed, they were proud that they had their photograph taken, and they were pleased to do it. It's very different today, very, very different situation, sadly. But, and people also, photography wasn't being used for any other means rather than a record or to show people to describe themselves. But today, there are so many uses for photography that people are quite weary of you taking photographs, and it's not the same situation. What are you going to do with that photograph? You taking a picture of me, what do you want that for? One of the saddest things is the fact that you can't photograph children anymore. And in my first series, there were kids playing in old buildings and images like that, which you absolutely no way you wouldn't even contemplate doing these days. That didn't exist in those days, in the 70s. Just took a photograph, gave them a print, and that was it.
So what was your approach? What was, if we can call it a process, but what, having had some discipline, I guess, knocked into you at film school as to perhaps an approach you could take, what did you do starting that project? I wanted them to be very, I suppose, very objective. I didn't want them to be subjective portraits, and so I knew the people and I talked to the people and completely relaxed in the company. Again, that is something someone from outside would find that hard to achieve. In a short time, there'd always be that little sort of barrier. Even when it was easier to take photographs in those days, you still have to break down the barrier between you and the subject. And I think that through knowing them and through meeting them time after time and perhaps even growing up with them, that there was no barrier. And that helped enormously, I think. So that body of work presumably would have had its first airing back to the lecturers in London. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you exhibit the work then at all?
The work, it was published, in fact, in Creative Camera, and that was quite a big thing at the time. And it was run by Peter Turner, and so I had a portfolio in there. He was connected to the Photographers Gallery in Newport Street, as it originally was, this tiny little place. And some of them were exhibited there, some of the photographs. And so that gave me faith in the work, in the body of work. But then coming home to Wales and, having, not good enough, I said, right.
Into the box
they went. Into the box they went for many years.
35, I think.
Yeah.
Something in that order.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. But sticking with it then, you brought it back to life more recently. And fantastic. It was shown both that project and the new one.
Yeah.
Which was titled
This Time in Wales.
At Red House Cymru in Merthyr.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Which is a lovely gallery, isn't it? What
fabulous.
A space to have.
Absolutely fabulous. Yeah. It was the longest running exhibition they've had there. It ran for 3 months, because they're normally a month. It was their most successful exhibition, and they had more people seeing it than any other exhibition they put on. So that was a plus. Yeah.
So you've alluded to it earlier. The original project at that time and it was of a time, and the images obviously portray that. The approach you could take and the participation of the people and the subjects was very, very different to the modern day. What was your approach then to this time in Wales?
I tried to do the same. I tried to make it the same. I tried my best to do that. Some of the people are still alive, and I photographed them. Only a handful, but there are some. And obviously I knew them. But it was a process of, finding new people, new subjects, and perhaps perhaps a little bit more selective than I did first time round. Perhaps I was a bit more conscious of what I was photographing, who I was photographing.
Did they still have the prints?
Yeah.
The ones that you had handed out at the time, yeah? Because what I found fascinating, you've obviously revisited some where they weren't still alive, some of the family members. But it's fascinating how that, it must be that local and that sense of community, the young son of Tex still wearing the outfit that his father would have made. There's a pride there, isn't there? In terms
Very
of
much so, totally,
the parents or the family members that went before.
That's right, yeah. And in fact, it was interesting to find connections between the original subjects and people, alive today. And with Tex, I photographed his granddaughter, who's an actress, Tara, and she works on BBC television. So, but still, that was 2 generations down. And as you say, his son, Wayne, he looks like he's become an incredible character himself now. Although he doesn't wear his father's outfit around.
Do you know, one thing that struck me, the original project, what was the main, was it miners? The guys in the pubs, the old guys having a drink, it would have been mining.
Heolgerrig was almost 100% mining community.
Right.
Almost every man in the village worked underground.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I found very interesting was revisiting the project in this time in Wales. 2 of the photographs stood out with me. One is kind of iconic with is it Lee the Tank Callahan with the tattoos on his back, and then the other one is the young girl who, I think, is it Miss Tattoo 2014?
Yes.
I always associated tattoos with, back then in the 70s, it would have been that manly thing of miners, welders, manual labour. In fact, I think the term tattoo, it goes way back, doesn't it? But it's workmanlike, I think, is one of the terms.
Absolutely. I think that's true.
Do you think hidden under, it's obviously a very different time, but the tattoos come across in the modern project, but they could have been hidden in the old one. I wonder how many of those guys perhaps had the tattoo of the wife's name.
I think there may have been 1 or 2. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think it's probably quite rare.
Right.
Probably
in this area, do you think?
Yes, in this area. But obviously, I think there was some.
I'm asking because I don't know whether tattooing was a thing in the mining community. Maybe it
wasn't particularly. No.
Shipbuilding, I know, from Glasgow and whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I think in this community, which was a very narrow, close community here, I don't think that was a big thing. So may have been 1 or 2 closet tattoos, but.
But talk about those 2 characters, for example. They feature in the more recent project, this time in Wales. But the Tank and the young girl, the tattoo artist. What was the approach? You say it was the same, but was there a slight reticence in terms of people being a bit suspicious? As you said?
No. Everybody I photographed they were really thankful for being exactly the same as first time round. They were great. They're pleased that I'd taken their photographs and proud to have the photograph taken. And it's interesting because it was photographed with the aim of there being an exhibition and possibly more. And so they were aware of that. And they thought that was great. Whereas the first time I just snapped people, as they would say. There was not that aim or that concept of it ever being on a wall anywhere or people going to see it. So, but overall, all the subjects, everybody photographed was really, really very helpful, grateful, pleased, positive, all those things.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Because we've heard from various people we've spoken to about the just outright fear that many young students would have in being sent out to approach people and ask to do portraits or whatever. From what you're describing, people enjoy. Not everyone, obviously, but until you actually ask, you don't.
That's true, I would say 100%. I had one strange experience. I was photographing someone outside a cafe in Merthyr Tydfil in the town. This guy came charging out from this cafe. It was in the background, not even in the photograph, and started shouting at me for taking a photograph, and I didn't have permission to take a photograph of him. And he looked as if he was a solicitor just by his appearance, and I think he was, but he had no right to do that or to say that. But he was quite bizarre. I wasn't even taking his photograph. I didn't want to. But and that was just on the side. But the actual subject, so it does. I think students have to go out and do it. And ask. I can understand that. I can understand the fear. I can. And it's for me again, that was initially an issue, I think. Going into pubs where you're a stranger, and I've been away from this place for many years. There is that sort of a little fear that, what are they going to say? But once you get in...
I'm sure you can turn the accent back on, Robert, when you need to. But interestingly, you brought the old project and the new one together, as you say, in Red House Cymru, very successful exhibition. Sadly, we didn't see it. But what kind of reaction did that have from the locals? I can understand the gallery space thinking this is fantastic.
The aim when I put it together was for local people. Right. That was part of the project. It was helped by Arts Council Wales, who are absolutely fabulous, and helped me to produce it. And the aim was that it would be shown locally, and people would have a chance to see their community, because quite often places like this, photographing exhibitions are like the previous ones, way out, London, or not even in the country sometimes. But for them to see it, and I think people are quite surprised and really, really interested and fascinated, and had lots and lots of comments, great comments from members of the public who'd never go into a gallery, never go and see a photography exhibition. They'd gone there.
What did you feel witnessing? The people walking around and... Did you do the secret shopper now and again, apart from the lunch?
I didn't very much. Once or twice I went, but what was interesting is people would recognise and they'd recognise someone they knew in one of the photographs, and then there'd be screams and yells and. But it was a very interesting experiment, and even the publicity for the project, I tried to make that local as possible. Rather than going for the London press and the London art world. And that worked, I think.
You also took the opportunity with the new project, this time in Wales, to revisit the filmmaking side as well. You wove that in. So talk to me about Vikings.
What it was, the people in the initial series, Once Upon a Time in Wales, I just sat down one night and wondered what the hell had happened to these people. So I decided to travel back to Merthyr, and I was living away at the time, and track them down and try and photograph them, record them for a film. And so many of them were still alive. And again, like this series, the ones that weren't, I sort of made a connection, maybe a family member. An interesting one was the little baby drinking the pint of beer in the pub. I tracked him down. He's an IT consultant, and he works internationally all over the world, lives in London. And so I interviewed him, and he talked about the times that he remembered in Merthyr at that when he drank the pint of beer.
It's funny but those photographs mean something, don't they? But I got a similar photograph of my grandfather, who I barely knew, but I'm taught sitting on his lap drinking whiskey, so it was the Scottish equivalent. But it's just something that doesn't seem to get done now. I don't think those types of photographs. No. Strangely enough, I'm sure they do, but you don't see as many of them.
When I got in touch with him when I started doing the new series, I said it'd be nice if I could get a photograph of him, and he said when I'm in town, he said I'll bring my son And if you can do a picture of me giving a pint of beer to my son, you can sit on my lap, he said, and we swap places. And he said, that'd be great. But sadly, we never did. We never did.
That film probably means quite a lot to you, because Astronauts, Vikings and Ghosts, for its full title, you garnered some awards from that as well, didn't you?
Yeah. It for me, the best part was that it was broadcast on television, and that meant quite a lot. Although it won the Newport International Film Festival Best Documentary, but being broadcast on Arte in throughout Europe was 3 times. That was amazing. The first time I saw it, it was completely by accident. Again, it was a coincidence. We were on holiday in Venice, and it was on in Venice, and but it was incredible seeing the reviews in the Italian newspapers, and on the way to Venice in France, the French newspapers reviewing it, which is quite. But that was quite a proud moment, I think. And again, the feedback was just incredible. Absolutely. From all over Europe. Really, really amazing. Several people wanted to use it as a subject for their dissertations. And I'd say a handful of people were encouraged to go out and photograph their community. And some even asked for advice. They said, how do I go about doing this?
You're trained as a filmmaker. The fashionable thing a few years, 10, 12 years back, was to do more of the digital storytelling approach, which seemed to be the multimedia weaving of stills photography, video and audio as a component. Were you ever tempted just to do the audio and stills approach, or was the filmmaking kind of in your blood?
The filmmaking, I think. I've always wanted to make a feature film, and it's still an ambition. So that's what I set out to do when I was 14 or whatever.
Could that be sci-fi in the Welsh Valleys?
That's gone. Not all of it is still left. That's definitely gone. But the filmmaking is just, the ambition is still there. So yeah.
But a couple of you mentioned publishing, but Once Upon a Time in Wales, the book is still advertised on Amazon. You need to sort something out though, Robert, because currently the buy it new price is £317 for a hardback copy. Someone's trying it on somewhere. But it's an important point about publishing. Many photo books do tend to go through that first edition and never appear again, ever. Have you been tempted to republish or
definitely
run those books again?
I'm sure Dewey will at some time.
Yeah.
It sold out really quickly. Very, very, very quickly. I think it was a third of the period it normally takes to sell a book for him. So we'll definitely look at that.
But you did get your work out elsewhere. You moved into the fine art market, and there's a genre of photography that you also sell and are represented in France, I believe, through a gallery.
That's right, yeah.
But what's the interest there, and what's that genre?
I don't know where that all started. Well, the catalyst that's behind most of my photography was Rhubarb in Birmingham, which was set up by Rhonda Wilson, who sadly died a few years ago. And that kickstarted everything. And through that, I made huge number of contacts. I met Dewey Lewis, and the book came out of that. And Dominique Charlet, the Paris agent, that came out of that as well. So it all goes back there. And that's when I started taking photographs again and became interested again.
But on the art side, it's landscape.
Yes, very different.
Yeah. Do you enjoy? What is it you enjoy about that side?
I don't know. It's very calm and no people involved, no hassle. Although there's no great hassle with other people, but it's you and nobody else. I like that. And I've done there's a whole series which I've done in Paris, a few series in Paris as well. So, I've had quite a few exhibitions for those in Paris. So that was fabulous. The first exhibition in Paris. And there've been quite a few there.
Stills photography is one of those very interesting areas where you have the commercial work in many genres, editorial, fashion, people selling work that way. But of course, the art market or fine art photography has been very successful in recent years. And again, has a plethora of different genres and styles been represented. I'm assuming you're being picky in terms of how you want to be represented, how you want to be shown, and where the work is shown and at what price. So, do you want to just reflect on the merry dance that's perhaps played by photographers and galleries?
I think any of the top galleries would do. No, it's a tough one. I have contact with about 3 or 4 quite big galleries, major galleries in Europe, but it's very tough to establish a situation where they like your work, they take your work, and they'll sell your work. You have to gain that, but once you do, it's great.
Is it hard work? Is there big expectations on their part from you?
I think once you're established, once you've made that connection with a gallery, or with an agent or both, you've that's a big step. If you take that step and you're over that, that's the big hurdle, and it's not too bad. You're all right then, but it's very, very difficult to get to that point. And meeting people, showing your work to galleries is very, very tough. Rhubarb in Birmingham, they used to do that, and I don't think there is anywhere in the UK that does it now. And they would have all the top agents and gallery owners from Europe, or from over the world, all around the world, and they'd be there once a year for a week, and you could meet these people and show them your work. And now you have to go to Arles. They do it in Arles in the south of France.
We've recently had Photo London. Have you been to that?
Yes, but that isn't a place where you so much where you show your work quite so much as compared to what they did in Birmingham, what they did with Rhubarb. That was entirely photographers meeting agents and selling. They're a bit more broader now. It's much more of the sales side of the agreement, but that's what you have to do. It's a tough one, and because there are so many people competing. There are just so many people competing now.
If you have a series of, say, limited edition prints of, say, one photograph of a particular style or a theme or a project, presumably the gallery is very happy, or the agent's very happy that that's sold, that's in demand. I guess they'll pressure you for more of the same. Is it easy to get into a rut and just trying to meet demand rather than broadening your...
No, I don't think you do. I think it's from my experience, it's worked very, very well, and it's been up to me to produce the work, and whatever I want, I had the freedom to do that. No limitations, no constraints, no.
So very much you in control. You supply them with what you want to be shown.
Yeah. It seems to work that way. It certainly does for me. And I had 2 good sales last week.
That's a good week.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Does that landscape work come from any one place, or does that tend to be you and your travels? Are we going to see a Wales-specific project?
No, yeah, I think a lot of the coast and the Gower, I think. Right. I think that's perhaps the major influence there.
Do you find that rewarding, not in a monetary sense, but do you enjoy that good work because it's more contemplative, or?
Yes, I suppose, yeah. It's more you with nature rather than you with people. It's very, very different. They complement each other, so I think it's good to do both. And I absolutely love France. So quite a few photographs of the French coast and of Paris. So
in terms of showing, you mentioned France and showing work there, but how important is it for towns like Merthyr to have a venue like Venue Cymru? Because I think we've reflected previously that there is a real dearth of photography galleries more generally across Wales.
Absolutely. When the first exhibition, Once Upon a Time in Wales, when that was first shown, there were very few galleries in the UK that were specifically photographic. A handful of places. And Sheffield, I'm trying to think, there was one gallery, the Lighthouse Gallery in Wolverhampton, which showed the exhibition.
When it was declined in Wales.
Yeah. They now, they've closed. They lost their grant and they don't show photography. So that's another one down. And it is quite sad, and you really could do with as many as possible, particularly in Wales. But that's why it's been so good doing this, trying this exercise in Merthyr to see. And it, as far as I'm concerned, it's worked, it's been successful. It's got the people in. My site had, at one point, it had 10,500 hits on my website. So, as a result of that, and I also want to take it a little further if possible. I'd like to have another book of the new series at some point, because I have about 80, 90 images now, although there weren't so many in the exhibition. So there's quite a sort of quite a collection there, and also hopefully next year there should be some exhibitions in France of the two exhibitions, possibly one in Paris and possibly in Arles as well. So
nice.
Yeah. So.
What do you engage with the? Do you stay involved with the photography community more generally in Wales? Do you?
No, I don't. Very isolated.
That could be a good thing.
It's just
untainted, Robert.
It's me. In Birmingham, I was very involved with the Rhubarb organisation, and I met some photographers there, and we sort of stayed in touch. And through the galleries there, and through Dewey Lewis, but not in Wales. I'm quite on my own.
Any observations on what you see happening in Wales or the current?
It's great to see so much going on. That's just amazing. Because when I finished my course, there was hardly anybody doing photography in Wales. Very, very few. And to see Welsh photographers now is fantastic. It really, really, that's great.
I just wonder if, going back to what I was saying earlier, if you to bring a couple of young, fresh students, pick any theme, you pick any town in Wales, whether it's Brexit as the overriding theme, or whether it's a town like Port Talbot, if they lost the steelworks, as my hometown in Motherwell in Scotland did, it was a steel town. They become these regeneration zones. I mean, you have it with Retail Park on the 470 at Merthyr.
Yeah.
There's no real sense of that. Not that old community, not that old.
No,
village,
well,
Merthyr.
Moving back to Heolgerrig after 20 years, the community is just it is nothing like it used to be. The old close community. My mother is still alive, and she lives in the village, and she's 90, and she has no idea who lives in her street. She knows one person opposite. Whereas years ago, she'd know everybody in Heolgerrig in the street, in the entire village, and that people moving in and out, and obviously that has a great effect. But it's absolutely true. I think the community has we've lost a lot. I think in that respect.
Which is why that work that you've created, I think, is so important, isn't it? And hopefully other people have got boxes under beds elsewhere in Wales where they've been recording, local communities in that same way, because it is a social history, isn't it?
Of course it is.
If people haven't been, if it's not a newsworthy item and the TV cameras or film cameras back then were involved, it is about stills photographers, wasn't it? Did the Aberfan thing, given it is in the valleys, have any influence on you in terms of your approach to local community stills photography?
The Aberfan...
The disaster.
Yeah. At the time of the disaster, I was in school. I can remember what we were doing in school, in the schoolyard, and everything stopped and people gathered in the schoolyard. And my father, he spent 3 days actually in Aberfan, helping them, and they had a couple of very large machines, mechanical diggers, and he drove those. They had difficulty finding people to drive these big machines to move and he did that, and he stayed there for 3 days. And he supplied some machines to help as well. So, But then, years later, my first wife, I ran a news agency in Merthyr Tydfil for about nearly 20 years. So we were obviously very, very involved in the anniversaries and producing stories over the years. So we got to know many of the characters there. Many of the people involved certainly did. It's very, very, very sad. I can remember doing lots of work on the 25th anniversary. Lots of newspapers, magazines, and television articles. Yeah.
What was your view on the images in terms of content being included in those?
I don't know.
there was few sources though, wasn't there? I mean, David Hurn, who we've spoken to, and Ian Berry were on the ground. There was an American came over who is, I believe, is having an exhibition. CC Rappaport.
What I thought was really impressive was the artwork that's in Cardiff Museum at the moment.
Yes,
that's absolutely stunning. That was just amazing. But for the 25th anniversary, I photographed lots of the people who were involved. The little girl who's carried out by the policeman, I photographed her, and so we got to know all those characters over. It was an ongoing story for many years.
It's a very sensitive area, though, isn't it?
Totally,
to be seen too opportunistic.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
because it's got to have been covered again and again and again, and those people must just be sick.
Yeah. I think, again, because living nearby and being part of the community, just like the earlier photographs, we knew the people there and got a relationship with them. But outside people, they obviously that was not liked, not appreciated. So, but it is all right for us. We were okay. That worked.
Now, talking of kind of sensitive topics, you're also interesting. I found it fascinating. The other project you were trying to get some backing for was the Vietnam. Same, but different. Taking Tom Jones to Vietnam. You've got to tell me that story.
Yeah, it was about one of the characters who was evacuated from Vietnam, and he was brought to South Wales and brought up in the South Wales valleys by a local vicar. And now he's a lot older. He finds it difficult to find his identity. He doesn't feel as if he belongs anywhere, and that's the phrase, which is a Vietnam phrase. Saying you're the same as the Vietnamese people, but different. So when he goes back there, they say, "Oh, you're Vietnamese, but you're not one of us." And he felt also in Wales that he wasn't quite. He had almost the reverse happening here, and so I was interested in making a film about him. At the moment, what happened at the time, another documentary was made, an absolutely identical subject, and it was so close to it. It just blew it. So it's still there, and it's still
orphans coming from Vietnam.
That's right. Yeah. But this documentary, it actually went to the same home, and it was so close. It was pure coincidence, but it was just. It shouldn't have happened. So
you've dropped that for the moment.
Yes, it's on hold, but there's plenty of potential. It's a real Le Tan, the boy who was brought out on one of the planes. Is an incredible character, very interesting. He devoted his entire life to helping the orphanages in Vietnam. He just raises money for them and travels back and forth every year, just giving aid or whatever, and organises charity raising functions.
Because there are two strands to that I find are fascinating and directly link to Wales. One was Philip Jones Griffiths, who still has, I think, some of his work being exhibited on the Agent Orange in a gallery in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the current crisis where you have immigrants and migration happening in large numbers. And there must be a lot of people that are going to be in the same boat, if I can call it that, as that young guy.
Absolutely. What he told me was that over the years that they've sort of, the orphans who came over have got in touch with each other, and they've become friends and become little sort of group community, whatever. And he said they're all very similar, and they have a common feeling about being in this country, about slight being alienated here, and also when they go home not being quite belong in there. But quite a few of them have moved back to Vietnam, which is quite interesting. And I don't know, I'm not sure what his intention is, but we shall see. But again, that's something, I would love to work on that in the future.
What I wanted to ask you about that was, were you taking the opportunity to do a stills photography project in tandem with that film? Was that access to him?
Yes.
Because you shot a promo, didn't you, for the project?
That's right.
You were over there.
And no, I didn't actually go. I shot it here.
Well done.
Obviously worked.
I was filmed.
And what he did, he actually he took a record of Tom Jones singing, and he played it in the orphanage, and they thought this was absolutely fantastic. So just taking Tom Jones to Vietnam. But it's a very rich, very deep, and very moving subject, and the poor kids who have been affected by the Agent Orange is absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Some of the children there, they call them box children, and what it means is that when they go into this home, it means that the parents have kept them in a box, out of the way, and that's how they've been brought up.
Did you see the exhibition in Aberystwyth when the Philip Jones Griffiths peaked last year? Yeah, it's it's quite harrowing, really. Some of that, because they cordoned off that. They had a private space for some of the agent, or the more harrowing work, if you like, the gritty work from some of it from the book.
I think today you have to be careful. There's a fine line between using images of these hideously deformed children, maybe for your own end, your own aims or whatever, and yet giving publicity, on the other hand, giving publicity to these people and these places which are desperate, Interestingly, a lot of Americans have moved there. A lot of Americans vets who actually fought in Vietnam, they've gone to live there. Very, very strange. And help out in the orphanages and in the hospitals.
Really?
Yeah.
Many years ago, to get your work out there or be seen by, I guess, some of the festivals, if it was more of an art type film, or documentaries in terms of the broadcasters, would have been the old U-matic tapes or VHSs hitting the desk. But
it was film when I started.
Film, sorry, yeah.
I had to lug around
a reel.
Yeah, a reel of 60mm film.
Yeah. But my goodness, how that's changed with platforms like Vimeo and YouTube.
Absolutely dramatic. What's amazing is the technology now is just so fantastic, and yet it doesn't seem, the quality of product doesn't seem to have gone up or increased in a similar respect. It's sad, really. It's really sad. But it's so easy to make programs now. It really is, compared to, we had to do everything on 16mm film when we were in college. Yeah, every project was shot on 16mm film, just so expensive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And similarly, digital photography is the cost element of buying film and paper and chemicals. That's all gone.
But presumably it's for you. Are you still shooting film, or are you shooting digital?
I don't. All digital.
For your video work as well, presumably, and TV work.
Yeah.
So you must find that far easier, far more cost effective to be producing short promos, tasters, teasers, and letting people see the idea rather than an A4 sheet of paper.
It's dramatically easier. I think when I made my film, we couldn't, in no way could we put a promo together or do anything in that. It was the finished item. The cost was just of doing anything like that was, people saw the actual thing, the real finished film. That's how it was. So, but the opportunities now it's just amazing. Absolutely.
And it's interesting to watch so many, it's not a particularly new thing, but again, I think it's because of these online platforms that many stills photographers now almost feel compelled to be creating short videos to show their stills work. But the Astronauts and Vikings project was very different because you were weaving the archive material into the present day and the changed town of Merthyr. But some of them, I guess, can pick up a few more interested clients through creating these stills films.
Absolutely.
With a bit of ambient music or
Absolutely.
sound effect.
Yeah. It's what people watch, and hits you get on YouTube or Vimeo can be quite large. That's a real big way to get your work out. Definitely worth doing. You
took a very interesting route into your formal photography, filmmaking education by studying film in Westminster. But just reflecting back and looking at it now, what's your feeling in terms of how photography and young talent coming through are being taught?
I think I was very lucky when I studied photography. There were so few courses doing it that the tutors tended to be the best in their field. And people from the industry were brought in, and we worked with people from the industry. And that was a great benefit, which you don't get these days. Because there are so many courses, I don't think you can get that. That can't happen. It's just not possible. And I think that was a big plus for my generation studying photography. And again, style wasn't as strong then as it is now. I think fashion has taken a much stronger influence on work, and students tend to produce, I don't know if it's their fault or the college's fault or whatever, but a lot of work is very similar. And you can't tell if you see someone's work, you wouldn't say, oh, that's so-and-so's work. It could be anybody's, and it doesn't have that, it has to be different. That's why I tried there's an experiment with this series I just finished now, shooting in black and white, shooting in the style of the 70s, and a very subjective approach, and it's paid off, and it's worked out, and it stands out, and people pick it out, and hopefully it has my name on it. I don't know. But I do think that's something that needs to be addressed. People need to be more open-minded, and needs to be a different approach. If everything is the same, it's a tougher battle for them at the end of the day. And they're copying styles which already exist, so the masters of those styles are out there somewhere. And so trying to compete with those is worthless exercise. So it's really important to do that, I think.
Surely the basis is still producing a good photograph,
Yes.
whatever that is, or whether it's
Yes.
a story or whether it's technically competent,
Yes.
and not being bombarded by filters or
Yes.
any types of post-production to try and make it better
Yes.
or acceptable
Yes.
in some way.
And yeah, I think particularly portraiture is really quite, I think it's gone through a really bad period of sameness, and for portraits that could be taken by anybody. That may be obviously the aim, very often that is the aim of the photographer, but yet on the other hand it takes away the skill, craft and personality of the photographer in that process, and it's easily copied, and I don't know, just so many people doing it. But I just think more styles people should experiment more with photography's got a really rich history. Just look at what other photographers have done in the past and experiment.
What's next for you then? What floats your boat in terms of?
Well, at the moment, this Time in Wales exhibition, and possibly the old exhibition, I'm working on future exhibitions in France for next year. Hopefully, there'll be several exhibitions coming up, which will be good, and more landscapes, and my lifelong ambition to write a film script.
Well, all power to your album. And thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.